In this PowerPoint, we're going to focus on light meters and how they help us to determine exposure. So previously, we talked a little bit about exposure, and we talked about reflected light meters, so that measures the light that reflects off a subject. So in the top two, the very top light meter is a handheld light meter, lights bouncing off the face and being picked up by the handheld light meter, or what you're used to in a built-in light meter is lights bouncing off the face, goes in through the lens and is picked up by the light meter there. Both of those are reflected. The incident, you actually have to have the sun hit it directly, so you have to put it in front of your subject, and it's a little more accurate, so that can be kind of helpful. In the studio, we do a lot with incident light meters. Flash photography, we do a lot with that as well. But you can really use incidents anywhere, as long as you can get in front of your subject and right up against your subject. So here are some examples of common built-in light meters. We'll get more specific. So a averaging meter kind of looks at multiple areas and kind of gives you the average, so left, right, up, down, center. Now that is a pretty common. It's also kind of maybe an older technology. We're not going to see exactly that as much. A multi-segmented meter in the bottom right is kind of what we do more of. So the top left is a quadrant, the top right's a quadrant, bottom right's a quadrant, bottom left's a quadrant, and then there's a center. So typically it takes those 5 areas, it determines which one is maybe the most larger area that's most consistent, and might prioritize that a little bit there. So it's sort of like an averaging, but it might prioritize where it gets the majority of as well. So in Nikon, we call this matrix a lot of times, and in Canon, we call this evaluative. Spot meters are just a smaller area in the center, and center weighted is a little bit bigger area in the center, and depending on your subject, that might be helpful. So here's how they look on your common cameras. So Nikon on the left, Canon on the right. So you can kind of see these different modes and how they're going to look. So look for those symbols. That'll help you find them in your camera. You can also see that in the red bar there, that is the light meter giving you some information. So I'll show you more here in just the next slide. So what this is telling you is that the light meter shown in the top is going from -2 stops to +2 stops. So that's 2 stops underexposed to 2 stops overexposed. And in that particular moment, if the rectangle below the 0 was right underneath the 0, that'd be correct exposure according to your camera, or normal metered exposure. Now, if you look at this diagram here in the bottom, you'll see that if it is going to the 1 here, this is showing you 1 stop too much light or 1 stop overexposed as it goes towards a plus. And if we look at the other way, 1 stop too little light or 1 stop underexposed if it goes towards the minus. So if you get this center row here and it's saying too much light enters the camera, you may have to adjust an aperture or shutter speed or an ISO to make less light enter the camera. And down here you'd have to adjust one of those controls to make more light enter the camera. So that is what a light meter tells you. So here is my normal exposure according to my light meter. You can see the light meter in the center. Now, in this example here, this is showing 1 stop underexposed. So my light meter will look more like this, where it's going towards the 1 on the minus side. And then here you can see the image, the brightest one here, this is my 1 stop overexposed. You can see my light meter going to the plus side. So that shows you how your light meter can tell you and help you with a bracket. And that helps us to determine exposure.